What was your most horrifying moment in school? Mine happened on the first day of the 6th grade. Chewing on red pen. It exploded. Desperate to get rid of disgusting taste, I ran up to teacher. She thought it was blood. Started freaking the fuck out. Called nurse up. Ignoring my attempts to explain it was just ink. Couldn't talk coherently because my mouth was filled with bitter red liquid. Red ink saliva dribbling out my mouth. Desperate not to swallow it. Tried to run out of classroom to water fountain. Teacher practically tackled me to stop me. Thought I'd gone batshit crazy. Bit my tongue off and was a danger to self others. No one seemed to understand that it was just fucking ink. Eventually had mental evaluation. Even after it was clear that there were no injuries and I could explain. No. Really. My pen exploded. In elementary school we were all assigned a country to do a little speech about. I was assigned Thailand. One of the most beautiful places in the country of course is Phuket Island. And with a handful of pictures from the island I cut out from a book I spent at least 90% of this presentation talking about Phuket. Yet, I was traumatized when a minute into my speech my classmates started laughing. And they laughed. And they laughed. And my teacher was red in the face with embarrassment. And so I just kept trucking through. It wasn't until just about the end that I realized that I had been pronouncing Phuket as fuck it the entire time as I was reading my cards. This is the island of fuck it. Double quote. Fuck it has many beautiful beaches. Double quote. I would love to go to fuck it. Double quote. I booked it from that room in trauma. TL. DR fuck it. I learned later that the correct pronunciation is Phuket. 3rd grade math class. The teacher had this regular game we played with multiplication flashcards, where the first person stood next to the next person's desk and she flashed a card and the first one to say the answer went on to the next desk. Same deal. Around the room until there was a champion. I was really fast. And kids used to hassle me for winning. One day I was about in the middle of the class, winning as usual, and I suddenly sneezed really hard. You guessed it, the force blew out a monster tuba fart. The whole class went nuts. And the teacher couldn't stop laughing either. I ran out of the room and ran all the way home. Humiliating when my mom brought me back to school. And everyone said I ran home because I'd shit myself, didn't. Got harassed for that for several years. I moved to a new state over Christmas break in 2nd grade. Met some nice kids my first day at the new school. Found out they lived just down the street from me. Made plans to hang out and build snow forts later. I was really excited. Until I got the shit kicked out of me by some fucking arsehole 5th graders on my way home from school that day. Took me about an hour to walk home because I was so disoriented from running away from them. Elementary school was at most a 5-minute walk from my house. My path took me right next to the local middle school, where some fucking arsehole middle school kids pelted me with snowballs. Joke is on those 5th graders though. Later in the year I saw them setting fire to some leaves by the playground after school. Told my parents what I saw, who were more than happy to let the school and the police know who had damaged their playground. I have one that sucked big time. My freshman year of high school. I was wearing a skirt and got touched very inappropriately by a boy from my class. I hit him with my book. If it happened today, I would have beat the piss out of him. And after my friends convinced me, I went to an administrator to tell what had happened. Only 2 people had witnessed the incident so I gave their names. One was my friend. My friend told exactly what happened. The other girl said she didn't see anything because she didn't want him to get in trouble. My friend's testimony resulted in his expulsion. But after that, I got a phone call from a schoolmate requesting me to take back what I said because he was going to be on varsity basketball next year. Also, his friends would bring it up and give me shit about it. I thought one girl was going to beat me up for a while because of it. I was afraid to go to school because of what people would say or think or do. I'm glad I recovered. But I'm sure a lot of people hated me for it. My most horrifying moment in school was senior year, the day I had discovered that all of the people I had thought were my best of friends had turned out to have created this hate group about me on MySpace, in the days before Facebook was even known to the general populace. There were about 52 members in total, and at one point even my then girlfriend had joined for a brief period. The core members, however, were comprised of the friends I had once held closest to me. Their goal was the attempt to push me so far as to cause me to commit suicide, which I had later tried and failed, somewhat unrelated. The issue had gotten so out of control at one point that even the Board of Education had to intervene after I got into a fist fight with 3 of them at a pep assembly. Let me tell you something. Don't ever let anyone ridicule you at the expense of their own amusement. They drove me to a breaking point. I'll give them that. However, that point did not end at all how they had anticipated, and instead found themselves getting the shit kicked out of them for all the school to see. While I don't condone violence, I will condone standing up for yourself. The day I snapped and fought back was such a proud day in my life. And while the kids who had spent that entire year taunting and harassing me stopped, so did every friendship I had ever made with anyone at that place. Those who were unaware and saw the incident, the entire school, applauded me for my actions. The damage had been done, however, and I've had to carry that weight all of my life. Probably gonna get buried. But here it goes. I was a young lad at the time. 1st grade. Whilst my brother was a preschooler. We would ride the bus home every day from school. And there were bullies that would make fun of my younger brother. We used to think that our little members were funny looking. So we used to play with them. Strange, I know. Anyhow, my brother was getting picked on big time on day. So I decided that, hey, my wee wee is funny. And it makes him happier. So I pull the little guy out and start flicking it up and down like a light switch. On the bus, my brother proceeds to copy me. And we are laughing our asses off. What ensued after is another story. The bus driver does not notice. Or at least this is how I remember. We get home. And then we get a call from the school. A little girl that was on the bus had told her parents, who then called the police. My brother and I got put in timeout for an eternity. Until the police came to the house. He told us that we are not allowed to do that in public. And the whole spiel. TL. Doctor pulled my penis out on a bus. Sneezed the giant snot into my hands. Didn't know what to do, so I wiped it into my pants. That didn't work and left me with a giant shield of dried snot on my jeans. I pretty much blocked out whatever happened after that. Oh. And this time at football practice in 8th grade. I had to shit really bad. Kept holding it in and managed to hold it in most of the practice, but had a couple wet farts here and there. You know. Running for 2 hours in pads and a bad case of the runs. Something's bound to escape. Back in the locker room, I removed my pants to discover some thick, angry skid marks in my football pants. Luckily it didn't bleed through. My underwear was worse. The kid next to me whispers, "I won't tell anybody." I shed a manly tear for that guy. What a true fucking pal. On the 2nd day of 6th grade. At the end of the day. Right before the bell rang. It hit me. I had to pee insanely bad. I quickly ended whatever conversation I was in and ran up to my teacher's desk, only to find a million other kids also wanted to ask her questions. At first, I just yelled out if I could go, but I guess she didn't hear me as I got no response. So I waited and waited and waited and waited until finally, yep. You guessed it, my body couldn't wait any longer and I just started peeing my pants right in the back of the classroom. Luckily, the bell rang in the middle of my urinating and everyone got up and left without noticing the pee puddle underneath me. I think, though I'm not sure, that my best friend saw me. But even if she did, we've never spoken of it. So, when my bladder was empty, I apologized profusely to my teacher. My face bright red and my pants wet. I waited until most everyone was out of the school and ran out with my backpack covering my pants stain. The night and morning before school the next day were torture for me. A million questions entered my head. What if she forgot to clean it up? What if she didn't clean it up so everyone would see it and laugh? What if the room smelled like pee still? These were questions I couldn't let go. But in the end, I went to school the next day and it was gone and never mentioned it again. And the worst, or maybe best, part is that a girl on my class a week later peed her pants waiting for the bus. People saw. And she was shamed into eternity. When people bring it up I just laugh but think that could have been me. TL. Doctor, I peed my fucking pants in 6th grade. In 7th grade I finally got my growth spurt, score, and could now begin the process of hitting on girls. There was a little lady in my drama class named Sam who had boobs. And lordy, those were some boobs for a 7th grader. Being a young adolescent, this was so much more important to me than her perfect pitch or kind demeanor. We were paired up for an exercise throughout the semester, and had started to become real chummy. Sam was the first girl I had ever tried to flirt with, and it seemed like it was going extremely well. We would run lines, talk about school and friends, discuss music. Bush is so cool. I know. I love porno for Paris too. And so forth. I should note that I had constant boners throughout this, but hid them well. Hey, I was in my prime boner days. One day, she had upped the flirting to a max level, complimenting my necklace and how in shape I was. Those days are gone. She tugged at my shirt a bit, saying, "How are those abs looking?" "Oh, they're pretty good," said I. All of a sudden, she fell dead silent, her face showing that mix of shock and humor that only the most embarrassing situations can give a girl. "I am so sorry," was all she said. And she ran off, not understanding what had happened. I looked down to see the tip of my penis staring me in the face. I had flipped it up into my waistband, like I said. Prime boner days. And it had taken this opportunity to jump free from its prison. She eventually talked to me again, but I had to deal with some awkward looks from girls for a while. Back when pagas were cool, I was in 12th grade and this was a couple years after Columbine. During first period one morning, my mom paged me. After class, I phoned her back and she tells me she just drove by my school on her way to work and there were cop cars everywhere. It was a bit of a rough neighborhood so I didn't think much of it. Figured there had been a fight or someone caught with drugs and went to my next class. At the beginning of the class, there was an announcement that there had been a fight and one kid was taken to the hospital. We soon found out he had been stabbed in one of the stairwells and died. My following class was next to that stairwell and we were told we didn't have to stay. That was horrifying. The funeral was really horrifying too. He'd been cut all the way down from his jaw, down the jugular vein, and it didn't seem that the funeral director did much to conceal the wound. For the next couple of months, the mood at school was pretty somber. In my 6th grade art class they had these multiple level drawing desks. That day I was sitting on the lower level of desks and in front of me, facing me, was a group of boys who I wanted to be friends with. They liked the same music I did and watched South Park. My standards were low, I guess. Anyway, one of them had his portable CD player and was listening to Korn or something, so I stood up so I could reach the headphones. I went to sit down on my chair and bam, hit the ground. My friend thought it would be a great prank to pull my chair. It was bad enough I fell, but the wind was knocked out of me, so I sat there gasping for breath like a fish for what I am sure was eternity. Being a room of 6th graders, they all laughed at my expense. Being blonde, I was then known as the blonde who can't even work a chair for the rest of middle school. Middle school went on to be the dark ages of my social life. In 7th grade I told my teacher that my stomach was upset and I really needed to get out of the classroom. Either she didn't believe me or someone was using the help us, but either way she declined my request. About a half a minute later I threw up on the classroom door. I ran for it once I felt the inevitable heave. I proceeded to paint the halls with vomit till I got to the nurse. When I was in 11th grade, we had movie day, the last day of regular class before exams. One kid, we'll call him Rob, had brought a bootleg of RoboCop. This was in 1988 while it was still in the theater. We watched it, and as the end credits started rolling, it cut to the previous footage that was on the tape before Rob had copied a bootleg to it. It was Rob, naked, on the living room couch, jacking off with a porn mag. He was loudly fantasizing about one of our female teachers who must have looked like one of the girls in the mag. He frantically tried to get to the front of the room to stop the tape, and as he did, he fell over several desks and split his lip. His footage ran for a good 35 seconds before the teacher, who was next door, came in and pulled the plug. Rob was sent to the nurse and was expelled. He finished his senior year at the other high school across town, but his 30 seconds of infamy followed him there. He was known as Robocock. It really screwed him up. The last I heard, he spent some time in an asylum before moving to California and joining the Navy. TLDR. Kid brought a movie to class, taped it over his own private wank tape, but didn't tape over all of his wanking. 7th grade basketball practice at 7:30 am. I had eaten a delicious breakfast of cereal and fruit punch Gatorade. While running down the court on a fast break, I proceeded to projectile vomit on the court. At this point, coaches were absolute hell to deal with, so instead of stopping because I thought I would be yelled at, I continued running and slipped and fell in my own puke. Not only that, someone else running behind me slipped and fell in it as well. So there we are, standing there covered in my red puke, and I am mortified. I bolted for the locker room as fast as I could, at which point I passed several 8th grade girls on the way, who proceed with the "you seriously? That is so gross," so I did what any other horned up adolescent boy would do. I blamed it on the other guy who slipped and fell in it. I've posted this before with another account, but here it is. So first, some background. My 7th grade English teacher was this really awesome and laid back guy, who pretty much lets us do what we want. So I often played games with my friends while also doing research and whatnot. One day he had a sub who wasn't really paying attention. So what the hell? Me and my friends decide to play truth or dare. It goes well at first and we have some good laughs. But then it happened. One of my friends dares me to pick a random girl in the class, pull her hair, and yell, "Is that a wig?" So I do. I find some random chick, proceed to yank off her wig, and proclaim for the whole class to hear, "Is that a wig?" Holy shit, I've made a huge mistake. She actually has a wig. I slowly walk back to my seat and sit down. The girl runs from the classroom crying room. That was not a fun day. TL. Doctor played truth or dare. Ended up yanking off some chick's wig. When I was in 2nd grade, I, weirdly, got really into historical fiction. Little House on the Prairie, American Girl, all of that. My class that year had a planned field trip where we'd go to this park of old houses and pretend to be pioneers for the day. We had to dress up like people from the time and make butter, feed horses, whatever. So during class, the one black girl in my class, Ebony, sweet as could be, asked the teacher what she should wear. At this point I had a great idea. Since black people at the turn of the 19th century were slaves, she should dress up like a slave and be the class slave. I raised my hand and said, Ebony should wear rags and she should be a slave, since back in those times black people were slaves. Double quote. I meant this innocently. At the time my perception of slave was just what a black person was. A slave was Addie from the American Girl books. They were strong noble people who made their escape. I had no clue what I had just said or as to the negative implications. The teacher made such a show about it. She called me a racist in front of the entire class. I was what? 7? I was so mortified. I cried every day for months because the class called me a racist and I didn't know what that meant. I think it's a little fucked up in retrospect, since I obviously meant it innocently. If I hadn't, the teacher could have used that as a teaching point and politely corrected me. Fuck that teacher. High school. Everyone's quietly working on some research in class. I slowly lean a bit so that I can ease out a big fart that was threatening to let loose. Right then, girl next to me goes YARRR and reaches out to prod me in the ribs. Combination of her cry and reacting to getting poked loses any subtlety in my rectal release. And I knock my desk along with that rather loud noise. She stops and stares. "Did you just fart?" Double quote. I look around. Acting confused. Trying to suppress any sort of blush. "Fart? UHH. No? Maybe you just heard the desk slide?" Double quote. Still not sure if anyone believed that or not. In my last year of school we had a substitute French teacher who everybody hated. Even her own colleagues. I was never that good at French. But our usual teacher was very forgiving of language deficits if the content was decent. This substitute wasn't. A week before we got our exams back she used about 15 minutes of class time to bitch at me about how bad my exam was and how my language was terrible in front of everybody else. She rambled on and on about how disappointed she was and how I was a total failure. When I got my result it was a C. To this day I have no idea what the fuss was about. But it was pretty humiliating at the time. TLDR. Teacher shamed me in front of the class for 15 minutes for a less than average result at a French test. One day in my first grade class, we got a new student. She was a very quiet girl. And honestly, rather strange. Whenever she did speak it was usually about her older brother who she seemed at least mildly obsessed with. In a way that bordered on creepy. She was nice enough. Though. I suppose. So. Being the nice kid I was, I tried befriending her. Shortly after this, she started following me everywhere. Around the classroom. The hallways. The playgrounds. She wouldn't leave me alone. And when she sneaked up behind me, she would always whisper various things and stick her hands down the back of my pants. This carried on for a little while before I finally confronted the teacher about it. What ensued was the most awkward visit with school authorities I have ever had as I explained to the principal how she always put her hands in my pants. TLDR. I had a problem in the first grade that I wish I had now. I was also in 6th grade when this happened. My class was watching some educational film in social studies. When all of a sudden I felt a certain wetness on the back of my pants. Naturally, I wore khakis that day. When I stood up, one of my friends looked at me in absolute horror and whispered, "You have blood on your pants." Double quote. My worst enemy at the time caught wind of what happened and proceeded to tell all of my grade what happened. All week, people giggled and pointed at me. All the while taunting. "Ashley's started her period." Double quote. Although this happened 7 years ago, I'm still haunted by it. Late to the party. So this probably won't get legs. My worst day of school was my sophomore year of college. I woke up. Like any other day. Made some Cocoa Puffs. Sat down. Played some Halo and smoked a quick bowl of marijuana before my Aikido, martial arts, class. Ate my cereal. Got my stuff together as my phone started ringing. It was my brother calling. Telling me not to go to class. At first I was befuddled. He went on to further explain that he had heard something about a gunman on campus. It seemed so unbelievable that it couldn't be true. He had no details. But he sounded serious, so I took his advice. I quickly told all around me the same thing. There was a reported gunman at Cole Hall. Everyone got on their phones and shared the news with all they knew. Still, nothing on the television. Nothing on the radio. Or email from the school. 12 whole minutes passed. It seemed like an hour. The TV and emergency email lines started reporting that there was indeed a gunman on campus. My brother's roommate, co-worker, and good friend was killed that day. I sat in disbelief for the following hours. Unsure how to feel. That was the worst day of school I had ever had. I was on my way to the field house. Sharing a parking lot with Cole Hall. I would have been out the door in less than 5 minutes. One phone call stopped me from experiencing the chaos firsthand. I spent the remainder of the year looking over my shoulder in every lecture hall. I had been shaken. 5 died that day in DeKalb. That was the worst day of school. Beginning of freshman year in high school I started my period. Yeah, not much there. But what happened the next day was so deeply horrifying. And also the reason I never bought Cotex anything again. I was sitting at lunch, just chatting it up with my friends, when suddenly this girl comes up to me and taps me on the shoulder and gives me a note. Then points behind her and said, "Someone told me to give this to you." So she hands me the note and walks away. I open the note and it says to check the back of my shirt. I turn around and to my utter and complete horror I had been sitting on my tank top and the pad I was wearing had leaked all over the bottom of my white, yes white, tank top. My heart just stopped and I forced one of my friends to give me her jacket. And another led me to the bathroom. The worst part was I had to be like that for the rest of the day because my mom was in another town with her friends that day. And my dad was out of town. Also, I had to give a presentation in 6th period, in front of the class. Well, I just wore my backpack during the presentation and ran home and swore to never wear Cotex again. Great way to start high school. I was about 12 or so, and my mother was a high school teacher in another county. My school had been closed for the day due to adverse weather, but hers was still open. Not being able to find a babysitter on such short notice, she took me to her school for the day. It was great for the most part. I got to hang out with her student aide and the other teachers who were her friends. It was great, that is, until I needed to go to the bathroom. I left the classroom and went down to the bathroom down the hall. Locked myself in a stall not made for a child as small as I was, and proceeded to do my business in peace. That is until two large football players came in hooting and acting up, causing me to freeze in fear. With the door locked to the stall, they started slamming on it as well as the wall of the stall, telling Mike to hurry the hell up and that they would kick my ass if I didn't get out of there. I quickly finished and bolted out of there, them laughing the whole time. I ran back to my mother's classroom and explained why I looked so freaked out. She sent a male teacher down to the bathroom who caught them smoking in the bathroom, leading to them getting suspended. But still to this day I get nervous when other people come into a public restroom that I am occupying. One day a bus pulls into school and everyone coming off is just buzzing with excitement. I find someone I know and ask what is going on. Turns out that the bus had passed a woman jogging in the nude. Not a fit shapely woman, but a large rolling pounds of flesh 250 plus lb woman, jogging in the nude. To make matters worse, she was recognized as a teacher at the junior high. It turns out that she had gone off her meds and was somewhat out of her mind. She took the rest of the year off and maybe the next, but eventually she did come back and teach at that same school. I tried to look for a news article as proof, but after an initial search for town teacher jogging nude I decided that it probably wasn't a good idea at work. 8th grade was my first year back in public school after 3 years of homeschooling. I was extremely oblivious and awkward. I tried my hardest to blend in and not make a spectacle of myself, but I was unsuccessful. I later learned that everyone knew me as Big Backpack Girl. That year was full of traumatizing incidents, but I think the worst one was the day some boys put tacks on my chair. Somehow I didn't notice they were there for a good 2 or 3 minutes, but I was acutely aware that everyone in the class was laughing at me. I shifted my weight or something and suddenly all the tacks were sticking me in the ass. I jumped up and everyone lost it. I always thought tacks on a chair was something that only happened to cartoons. I went to a private religious middle school, which meant that we had mandatory prayers twice a day. Most of my classmates and I spaced out during that time, but we had to attend and play along. One day in 8th grade during a 10-minute stretch of silent prayer, I noticed my friend eyeing an empty light socket on some wall-mounted strip lighting with a metal bobby pin in his hand. He looked at me as if to say, "Should I do it?" To which I nodded vigorously. My nod was all the permission he needed, because he stuck that bobby pin right in the light socket. The light socket literally exploded. A jet of sparks shot out of the socket accompanied by a huge boom, which echoed around the room of silent students and teachers. And my friend's shirt sleeve caught fire. The entire room was staring at my now crying friend with burning shirt sleeves and the black smoking light socket. Luckily he wasn't hurt. But the image of the silent room of 100 plus kids staring at my idiot friend who had just accidentally blown up a light socket still makes me giggle. Mine were just a few compiled events, stuff I can laugh about now. But as a shy 13-year-old, I was super embarrassed. In elementary school, I was the smart girl that wasn't overly pretty, thinned out and got boobs later. When I finally got my first crush, I was a little shy about it. He wouldn't be interested in me. Well, the class A jerk in my class saw that I might have a crush on this boy. He turns to me, my crush sitting right beside, and goes, "You're a lesbian, right?" I was mortified, not at the fact that being gay is a horrible thing, but that this jerk is talking about my sexuality in front of my crush. Well, then it decides to continue. Our valedictorian all-star decides to message me on MSN that night. She goes, "SGC22. Can I ask you a question? It's just that I've heard all these rumors going around that you're a lesbian. I just want to know because we have gym class together and I'd be really uncomfortable changing in front of you if you were." Double quote. My mom made the most amazing split pea soup once a year from our leftover Christmas ham dinner. She would spend all day making it, and it was our family's absolute favorite. One horrific day in 6th grade she made me a thermos of it to take to school for lunch. I was so excited for that damn soup that early in the morning. At my desk, I sneakily opened the top to get a whiff of that hammy goodness and boom. I dropped the whole thermos all over myself, my desk, and like 4 other kids' desks, we were in desk clumps. Guess what split pea soup looks like to 11-year-olds? Yep. Vomit. Kids started screaming. Jbev25 puked. While running out of the classroom. This moment is literally the most horrific moment of my childhood. FWP. I know. Close bracket. As senior class president, I had to get up and give a welcome speech to the new freshman class on the first day of school. Unfortunately, I was also sick and losing my voice at the time. I get as far as "Hello, my name is Vic Val," when my voice loudly cracks in the most pubescent sounding way. The freshmen all looked shocked and were too scared to laugh. I died inside, regrouped, and said, "Vic Valiant." And high school is full of moments like those. Get used to it. Then I continued with the speech. Decent save. But I still hear about it from friends. Senior year in high school. One of my classes was AP Calc. It was the week before the AP test. My teacher was saying how in the last so many years every single kid had gotten a 5/5 on the test. She then came up to me and said, quiet but loud enough for everyone to hear, "Are you going to pass this test? Because honestly I'm not so sure." Double quote. That didn't exactly inspire a lot of confidence in me as a student. To hear your teacher say after 8 months of straight studying for one test to get college credit, I ended up with a 5 and found the test really easy. But still, it wasn't that she was mad at me. She was more disappointed. And that was worse. Humiliating for all of my friends' classmates to hear that. When I was in middle school, I think maybe the 7th or 6th grade, I was in orchestra class. I played the violin but wasn't feeling that great that day. Eventually in class I realized that it was time to go to the bathroom and eject my stomach into the toilet. I hurriedly told my teacher I didn't feel good and ran to the bathroom to vomit. I get to the bathroom, and as soon as I vomit, the force on my stomach made me shit myself. I must have repressed what happened next because I don't remember anything after that. No one made fun of me for it. But having shat yourself in middle school with all your books in your classroom still. No easy way out. I must have Gohan blacked out. Tapped into some uncown powers and teleported around that fucking school. I vividly remember my worst moment in grade school. It was the 6th grade party and all the parents sent their kids to school with candy, cookies, cakes and soda. The school was celebrating the 6th graders who were graduating and leaving that year. The party was really fun. From what I can remember, my friends and I were joking around together, all guys, and before you know it one of my friends dared me to do something awful. It was the last of school, And I was like, hell yeah, I'll do it. But not saying hell. Just however a 6th grader would say it. He handed me a full cup of Sprite and said, go pour it on Jordan, the hottest girl in the school, it'll be really funny. So with the support of my best male friends, I took the cup and confidently walked across the room to her sitting in her desk and poured the entire thing over her beautiful blonde hair. It was not funny. At all. Nobody laughed. Not even my friends. Immediately I wanted to die. It was the worst moment I can even begin to describe. What was I to do? Say sorry? Yeah, right. She just looked at me and didn't say a word. I wish she would have, just so I knew what she was thinking. But she didn't. The teacher rushed over and some of the other girls in class ran to the sink to get paper towels. And nobody was about to let me help. I'm 20 and I still remember this like it was yesterday. TLDR. I dumped a Sprite on a hot chick at school when I was 13. 6th grade for me as well. My cousin informed me how to masturbate and I spent the rest of the summer smacking that salami. First Friday of the school year comes around and we have Catholic mass. I sit next to the hottest girl in my class. You could always see her bras through her white shirt. They had just gotten big enough for all the guys in the class to notice she was first. I had a boner before we sat down. Fidget with said boner all of mass. When the Our Father prayer comes around and I held her hand, I managed to get a nice feeling pushing up against the pew in front of us. With the lack of blood to my brain, I think it's a good idea to hump said pew. We finish our prayer as I splodge the last week of future children in my pants. Quickly coming to my senses, I run to the bathroom. Brilliant think on my end set, just throw water on yourself and say the sink sprayed. I dose myself and come back right during communion. Everyone sees my piss pants. I turn red. I cry. I never live it down till I go to a different high school 3 years later. TLDR. I came during. Deliver us from evil. Double quote. It didn't happen to me. But it was still horrifying to be a witness. I went on this sort of retreat integration day when I was in 5th grade with my class. We were getting some lecture in this tiny classroom and the teacher left for a few minutes to talk to someone outside. Cue all 20 kids going crazy. Starting jumping up and down and just being kids. One of the girls decides at some point to go up to the dry erase board and erase whatever the teacher had written there. Just to be annoying. Because it was the 5th grade and we were all super short. She had to jump up and down to reach whatever it was she was erasing. Out of nowhere we hear a scream and a girl looks down to her stomach. You know how come of those boards have the holder for the eraser? This one had a metal one. And pretty sharp at that. The girl sliced her stomach open when she jumped up. I just remember looking at her and looking at her open stomach and feeling like throwing up. All the kids start freaking out even more while she collapses to the floor and the teacher comes back and immediately grabs, edit. Brags the girl is not a term I made up. The girl takes her outside and calls 911. She ended up being fine. Had to go into the ER and got a bunch of stitches. But that's the first time I realized what was inside the human body. And it was terrifying. May have wrote this before. I forget. Was in the 2nd grade. Maybe 3rd. It's all kind of vague. I'm from the middle of nowhere, Texas, and we had barely enough kids for 2 classes of 14-ish kids. So the 2nd grade teachers' rooms are connected by bathrooms between them. Teacher A equals bathroom equals teacher B. The bathrooms consists of 2 toilets. No urinals. There are 2 connections between the room. 1 boy and 1 girls. I don't know if this was common for small shitty schoolhouses back in the day, but it's how our podunk school was built. So, I went to drop a deuce. These didn't have locks. I guess because we were little kids. I don't know. Anyway. Unbeknownst to me, we are about to watch a movie, Teacher B's room. That's awesome. Except she forgot I was in there. And had the kids line up single file to walk to the other classroom. So pretty much what happened was, I'm pooping and all the kids are walking through single file pointing at me and laughing. Saying HAAHAAA he's pooping. Equals. Shit was traumatic. In 6th grade I went to the Bahamas with my parents for a winter vacation. On the beaches down there, women walk around and try to sell things, particularly hair braiding. I decided that getting my hair braided would be kind of cool, so I did. When we got back to the States, I decided to keep my braided hair, complete with green and white beads, for my first day back at school. I am a white male. It was one of the worst decisions of my adolescent life. Oh boy. Kindergarten, probably the first week or so. I asked to use the bathroom. The girls' room has someone in it. So my teacher says to use the boys' room. It was single occupancy. So I walk in and I see this new contraption there. I think to myself, well, that's a different kind of toilet. But it looks like fun. I drop my pants and hop up onto this bad boy and commence taking a dump. I forgot to lock the door. Hey, it was the boys' room. I was too distracted by being allowed into the boys' bathroom. And one of the other boys walks in and starts shouting to the class about how I pooped in the urinal. It was the first day of school and I was just starting 1st grade. I was in a brand new school and I didn't know anybody, so I was really scared. About halfway through the day, I had to go to the bathroom. For some reason, even though my teacher was a really nice lady, I was afraid she was going to say I couldn't go to the bathroom. So I sat there and held my pee for as long as my little 6-year-old bladder would allow me to. Which was about 3 minutes probably. Eventually I could not hold it in anymore and I pissed my pants. It got on the floor and went under my desk. Somehow, no one noticed that there was dripping water coming from underneath my chair. So I sat there with my wet pants for a good 20 minutes. Eventually the girl behind me raises her hand and I hear her say, "MRS. Teacher, I have water under my desk." Double quote. At this point I think I'm screwed and the teacher is going to call me out for pissing my pants and everyone is going to know and I'm never going to have any friends. But luckily the teacher said she would take care of it later, and then after the school day was over she called me up to her desk and says, "etc. Did you go to the bathroom in your pants?" Double quote. And at that point I just started crying because I was so embarrassed. The teacher was really nice about it though, and she told me that it's okay and that it happens to everyone sometimes. We made an agreement from that point on that every time I got up and went to the bathroom to do my business, she would give me a Skittle. So it all worked out in the end. TLDR. Pissed my pants during school when I was 6. Doesn't matter, got Skittles. In 7th grade my class had become pretty close to our history teacher. So much so that most of the class time was spent joking about current subjects and making fun of Lewis and Clark's dog named Seaman. Yeah, we were that cool. Well, one day, my friend dared me to hide under our teacher's desk while she was gone and scare her when she came back. Thinking it was hilarious, I agreed. So after scaring her and having a good laugh, class ended and all was good for about a week or so. Then came the call to the principal's office. The principal sat me down, asked me about the incident, lectured me on the rules of sexual harassment and let me know that I would be facing horrible consequences once the school board hears about what I had done. Basically telling me to at least suspect suspension, but also that expulsion was easily on the line. Walking back to class I was devastated. I had never done anything bad before and my parents were going to freak. Once I walked into the class, I looked at my teacher and said, "MRS. Teacher. It was just a joke. I was only kidding," to which she replied, "So was I." Then winked at the principal and the whole class started laughing. Needless to say, I learned my lesson and that teacher earned a cool place in my book after that. Crisis averted.